Welcome to All Fired Up Radio. When the mainstream media leaves you scratching your head, join us for Words Matter. Now your host, Mary Weeks.
Welcome to Words Matter on All Fired Up Radio. I'm your host, Mary Weeks, live from Dallas, Texas. We have George, my industrious sidekick, online here too in the Dallas area.
How are you this evening?
I'm doing good. Is our sound coming through good?
You are sounding really good. So hopefully you'll sound good through the night with the storms we got kicking through here.
Yeah, I hope so. Yes, I want to thank Beatrice Wilson of All Fired Up Radio. She issued me a professional-grade microphone, so I can now play on my or talk on my own show and not sound like a caller. Love it. I've been playing with this thing. It's like a toy. It's so much fun.
Oh, well, you know how things are. Anytime we get something new, it's always something to play with, right?
Oh, yes.
Before you get kicking off, we have a public service announcement that the National Weather Service has issued for the Washington, D.C. area. High, hot winds are blowing. Apparently, there's a man with big ears in the White House, and every time he stands outside, he opens his mouth, and there's a gust of some hot air coming through. And so the National Weather Service is warning us about that.
Yes, we have to be very careful for those winds. They burn.
Yeah.
It's been bad. Oh, my gosh, this weekend I've just been watching all the little Sunday shows and the clips, and the rhetoric is ridiculous. There's just so much stupidity flying around there this weekend. I couldn't believe it.
I swear it was which Democrat could outdo the other in stupidity and stupid comments this weekend. Just when you thought somebody couldn't go any further down the toilet, out comes the next show with somebody who went even further down.
It just keeps getting worse and worse. Who do you think was the worst this weekend? Was it Obama?
It's got to be a tie. Obama's up there, but it's probably a tie between Wasserman Schultz and Axelrod. Between those two.
Really? Yeah. I caught Wasserman Schultz a few times this weekend, and she never ceases to amaze me with how much she just blows the same talking points over and over. And I guess, it's just that keep repeating, and eventually people will start believing it when they hear it enough.
Yeah, she was out. She was probably out there the most. As I flipped through the stations between Fox and MSNBC and CNN and ABC, CBS, she was definitely by far the most visible person over the weekend. She was out, but she's part of that response team. I've talked about this before. It's the one thing that the Republicans don't have that they're lacking in, and it's the one thing that Democrats excel at, is they have a response team out there. And every time Romney or somebody on the Republican side said something at any time that could be just slightly off, they'll get buried for it, because the next thing you know, the response team is out and the rhetoric is on.
And they get on every show with the
show doesn't matter. And when they make gaffe, which is almost constantly these days, is because they know they're getting away with it. Nobody says a word. The right is totally dead quiet. And of course, like now over the weekend, they're out there trying to change all the subjects and get everything out. First we had Fast and Furious, and then the Supreme Court decision knocked that off the front page. So now they're going back to class warfare, so that's going to dump the Obamacare off the page for now. But that's what they're all about right now, is changing the subjects. Look, hey, look over my left hand, don't look what's in my right hand. We ignore that hand. And I think that's what we're going to see a lot of now coming down the road.
Oh, yes, they've been fighting the jobs. I guess we got a really bad jobs report for June. And, oh, boy, they were out in full force. Debbie, what's-her-name, Shultz, and Obama, too. He was on the campaign trail. And he did try and pull that class warfare crap. I mean, it's just ridiculous rhetoric, but he's pulling out all the stops. He isn't letting anything get in his way this campaign season. Not the economy, not bad jobs reports, certainly not facts or reality. And, of course, while he's telling us that white is black and black is white, his supporters are telling us that if we disagree with that, we're racist. I mean, it's so ironic.
I mean, it's just so bad how they're spinning everything out of control. And it's like, it's almost like the school testing now. When school testing wasn't going well, instead of getting on the teachers and fixing the problem, or maybe looking at the curriculum or whatever needed to be done to help the students learn better to improve the test scores, no, let's not do that. Let's just lower the scores, and that way it's okay. Yeah, just lower the standards. Well, now I guess the standards for unemployment have been lowered. That apparently now 8% and 8.2%. Well, that's okay. We're doing good at that.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine what a George Bush presidency at 8.2% unemployment? I mean, they were screaming. They were screaming at the guy at 4.9, 5, and 6% when he was in those ranges, and they were getting on for bad unemployment. I mean, what? It's amazing.
Hypocrisy.
It's just amazing.
Incredible.
Absolutely.
Well, so we had Obama, where was he? Pittsburgh on July 6th last week, when we have a clip on it. And this is where he's starting with the class warfare. I think we're supposed to feel bad for him because he's got it so rough having to go in this campaign against Romney, who is doing so much better than he is raising funds, which I have to laugh. They had record funds, fundraising after the Obamacare decision. People just obviously, I think, see that we're going to have to get the Democrats out if we're going to get Obamacare repealed. So, man, they've just been giving to Romney left and right. And so I guess Obama's already starting to make the excuses as to how he's the underdog. Poor baby Obama doesn't have the millions that Romney has to go by. But he actually made just an outright lie when he was in Pittsburgh. And let's run that clip. Hear him in his own words.
You know what? I might be worried about all this money being spent if it wasn't for my memories of previous campaigns. That first campaign I ran, the last campaign I ran in 2008, I've been outspent before.
His pants he should have no pants left. Oh my gosh, there shouldn't be any left in this world. He has burned so many pairs.
He must be so charred down there. It's amazing.
I mean, yeah, I know.
This is the guy who was bragging early on in the campaign, before things even got rolling, that he was going to raise $1 billion to run for his campaign. I mean, I just read the other day that last month he spent close to $60 million in TV ads last month.
Just last month.
Yeah. And, Romney's only spent $15 million. And if I was the Romney, this is where I would love to be one of their advisors, because I would be sitting back and saying, hey, the guy ran the government. Look at how much money he's spending. He made us go broke. He's killing us. Well, now he's doing the same thing with his campaign. He only took in like $45 million. He spent close to $60 million. His campaign's going to go broke. which, to be honest with you, would play well for Romney, because if Obama keeps spending at the pace he's going, he's going to run out of money before he gets to the end.
I take it as a good sign that he's having problems raising funds.
Oh, yeah.
Even with all the Hollywood elite and people like Bill Maher who will just hand him $1 million, it's great. The American people aren't really getting behind him this time. They're certainly not opening their wallets. Although, in reference to his little statement there about 2008, John McCain spent $288 million on that campaign, and Obama spent $750 million.
Yep.
So he outspent John McCain by over $400 million. And then he just made this claim, poor me, he's remembering those times in the 2008 campaign when he was outspent. I don't know where he comes up with this stuff. It's total lie.
Yeah, he put out $3 for every dollar that McCain spent. And he realized, what was it, a couple of months ago when he came out with his comment, I need help from the super PACs, we need to start raising money. He knew that Romney had the super PACs. Because they want him out. And he knew those super PACs were going to come up against him. They didn't rise so much to help John McCain because I don't really think the super PACs thought a whole lot about John McCain. They didn't. I think they probably had more confidence that they thought he might just beat Obama because Obama was a nobody. They didn't really come out and vet for him. They didn't come out and advertise for him. Where now that they have a clear mission, they want to take Obama out, so they're showing up more now.
I hope so. I hope so. You never can tell. It just you turn around and he's doing so many fundraisers. I can't believe the man doesn't have more money already stockpiled. It seems like all he's done since he got into office was campaign.
Oh, I know. And it's amazing the money he pulls out in the weekend. He goes out to Clooney's house and $15 million for the weekend. I mean, that's incredible.
Oh, yeah. I know. At this rate, you would think we wouldn't have a national deficit. He should just be able to raise the money the way he goes in and pulls millions out.
Yeah, Hollywood's so upset. They want to pay more for taxes and stuff. Well, I'm thinking if they took all that money for campaigning and all that tax money that they want to pay, toss it all in there. Let's pay down the debt or get the budget balance, one or the other.
Boy, I'd just like to see them pass a budget. At this point, I don't even care if it's balanced. Can we just get a budget passed and have an idea of what we're dealing with? We keep talking about uncertainty and how businesses they're not hiring. Even if they're making profits, they're afraid to hire. There's too much uncertainty with Obamacare and with the tax rates that they're talking about now and letting the Bush tax cuts expire. There's just so much uncertainty. We don't have a budget. We don't really know what we're spending. We're finding it all out after the fact. I would think that Congress, they are so negligent. And I've got to blame the Democrats. Of course, Obama keeps telling us that it's not him, it's not the Democrats, it's those Republicans. But in all honesty, the Republicans in the House have passed a budget. And the Democrats in the Senate haven't, and they don't want to. And it's like I guess we've passed enough continuing resolutions to get us through the election, and that's all they care about. And I personally, as a taxpayer, I'm so tired of watching them fudge their own accounting. If we did this kind of stuff, we'd get arrested as a small business person.
No question. Let me tell you, I went out to the house.com, or house.org rather, and the senate.org this morning because I was, it's kind of went right along with what you were just saying. We have so many issues. You could agree. How many issues can you think of? At least, 20 or 30 issues that are just glaring in our face right now that we should be working on. They should be talking about it. They should be getting up in the morning, excuse me, And these committees should be meeting and discussing between them things that we can do for budgets, things we could do for trade, things we could do for employment, projects. I mean, there's so many things to talk about. And so I decided to go out there and read and see what they were doing. And it must have been a really brutal day mentally for the House, because it took them till 2 o'clock before they came into session. And it must have been a rough morning. So they finally get into session at 2 o'clock and they begin. And I guess that whatever it is that they were discussing and the roll call and whatnot must have been so intense that they were wiped out. And at 2:11 they had to have a recess.
2:11?
At 2:11 they had a recess. And then they came back at 4 o'clock. And they had a bill that was read on the floor. There was no discussion. Then there was a second reading of another bill on the floor. And I guess that was just, it must have been very intensifying bill. There must have been a lot in there for them to absorb. Because at 4:47, they had another recess.
Yeah.
And then they came back at 6 o'clock. 6:30. They came back into session at 6:30. And at 6:48, they wrapped it up for the night.
Wow, they earn their money, don't they? Not.
Could you imagine now taking that? I'm sure that's not the typical day. At least I hope that's not. But could you imagine taking this salary
and only working that many? But I have to say too, though, chances are that they break up into House committees or have committee meetings also in the first part of the day. I hope so. I hope we're not working in 15-minute increments 4 times a day and calling that, worthy of over $100,000 in salary, plus the benefits these people get.
Yeah, they didn't talk about the role. They didn't talk about any bills. Nothing came up for a vote. No debating, no discussion, nothing. And that's exactly where I was going with what you just said. Is could you imagine taking 535 salaries and with all their benefits, and then there's the overhead for running the Capitol, electricity and heating, the air conditioning and everything, the guards and of course the staff for all these people, and break it down to that. It would be amazing what these guys are making per hour if you took that actual work time in the House and on the Senate.
Oh, yes. Well, it makes what Rick Perry was saying during his campaign for president. He was proposing that the House and the Senate not be in session full time. And they really aren't in session full time, so I think that's an excellent idea. I like that we don't have a full-time session here in Texas, that they come in once in 2 years. They spend 2 or 3 months going through the bills that they've been working on in their own time and voting on things and making changes, and then they go back to their regular lives. They don't get to stay in Austin, Texas, or Washington, D.C. It would be for the federal level, and just, get lobbied and run around playing politics, when the fact of the matter is, if you have to go home for 9 months out of the year and make a living at a real job and not get paid to be on an annual salary for those actual 2 or 3 months that you're actually working with the Congress, I think that would be wonderful. I don't want these people in session all year long so they can basically what do? Every time Congress is in session, they screw us as the American people.
I think they should be treated just like all union employees. If there's no work, you go home and you don't get paid.
Yeah. That would work for me.
It worked for me big time.
Well, we had Obama. We got to get to this one. We got a clip called "He Tried Real Hard." You have that one, right, George? This was an interview on the campaign trail in Ohio, and he tells us how he tried real hard to reach across the aisle, but those evil Republicans just won't budge. So this is just him spinning yet another crappy jobs report for June, but let's listen to his noise.
What do you say to the Cincinnatian who voted for you 3.5 years ago, who's now on the fence, maybe unhappy, who says it's so negative. He said he was going to reach across the aisle. That hasn't happened.
You know, I suspect that most people in Cincinnati would acknowledge that I've tried real hard, and you know, we just haven't gotten the kind of willingness on the part of Republicans to engage on a whole range of issues that I wish had happened. And you know, part of what I think needs to happen in this election is the voters once again have to send a message. We want common sense ideas. We don't want folks who are just saying no to everything, even stuff that traditionally you were in favor of.
Real hard. He tried real hard. That one really? Can you believe this guy? I mean, what is he, 10 years old? He reminds me of Eddie Haskell trying to convince us that he's just the boy next door, trying real hard, Mr. and Mrs. Cleaver. Oh, I was with this guy.
I tell you, I like him to show me just one time that he reached out across that aisle. For one time, in earnest, that he was serious about doing something with the Republicans.
No, I can't. I can't come up with anything where he's actually tried to compromise in any sense. I mean, how did he really reach across the aisle? What did he try really hard to do? He proposed the budget to Congress, and all they did was increase spending even more than Bush did and added even more bailouts and stimulus spending than Bush, and they blame Bush for everything here. Yeah. And his own Congress rejected it.
Well, Teresa in the chat room said we should give Obama a participation trophy.
Oh, I saw a really funny satire on him. It's exactly what, I don't think they said a participation trophy, but they basically said that the Nobel Committee is considering him for a Nobel Peace Prize now for trying real hard.
Oh, that's funny. I haven't heard that one.
It was pretty clever. I'll post it on the blog notes so people can see it there too. It was pretty clever. It's like this guy's a child. It's so ridiculous.
I you know, that's why I said, you know, there's just one thing after another. How could he possibly believe in his heart when he said that to be true? He has to know that everybody can look and see that's not the case, that he tried real hard. He didn't try hard at anything. I mean, he couldn't even with his own people, when he had 2 years of complete control of the House and Senate, he still couldn't get things done. I mean, it didn't matter what he could blame the Republicans all he wants, but at the end of the day, they could have sat up and held big barn fires in the Capitol and Rotunda, and it wouldn't have mattered. They had the votes to pass anything and everything they wanted at will, and they couldn't get it because his own people weren't with them. Even with Obamacare, remember all those backdoor deals he had to do to get people to vote for him because they weren't going for it?
That's right. They had to make a whole bunch of special deals and buy their own party's votes just to pass Obamacare. I mean, and let's think about what he tried to pass with his Democrats in control of both houses of Congress. I mean, remember they tried cap and trade, and his own Congress wouldn't vote for it. His own Democrats wouldn't pass it. So, you know, of course, he goes and enacts it anyway through the EPA, which, you know, that's hurting our economy. That's one more bad policy he's enacted through dictatorial processes instead of through legislation. He did the same thing with the DREAM Act, and, you know, the Democrats were in control of Congress, and they wouldn't pass it. So, you know, he enacted what he called the ICE policy, and what he added some 800,000 undocumented workers to an already hurting job market, or at least he said he did. I don't know if we're actually going to see those come to pass, but he's put it out there as we're going to allow 800,000 undocumented workers to legally work. I mean, that's just hurting our economy. It's more bad policy. And then, of course, we do have Obamacare, and they managed to pass that one with all their backroom deals and purchasing their own party's votes. It's ridiculous. He had to buy his own party's votes to get anything enacted in the first 2 years, and yet he's going to stand here and say that Republicans are obstructing him now. They put his budget up for a vote in the Senate and they couldn't get a single Democrat to vote for it.
Two years in a row. 2 years in a row. Not one person in the House and not one person in the Senate would vote for his budget. Not one.
Well,
not even the most severe Democrat that backs Obama voted for his budget.
But he's trying to tell us that it's the Republicans stopping it. What's even more ridiculous about it is I've had people tell me, liberals tell me in arguments, that he has done these things, and it's just such a lie. I mean, when you really look at what Congress has been doing and what the House has been trying to pass or getting passed and what they've been sending to the Senate and what's been going on there, nothing's been coming out of the Senate, basically. And the only thing that the House and the Senate can agree on, if you ask me, is bad legislation like the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. I mean, they've got all these little crappy things they're getting across, but all the good legislation is just sitting in the Senate waiting for Harry Reid to get his thumb out of his rear end, I guess.
It'll never happen. There's over 2,700 bills that he has tabled over there. And he's already telling everybody since last week to basically don't waste your time repealing Obamacare this week, because he's telling everybody already that when it gets to the Senate, it's dead on arrival. He's going to table it. So it'll go nowhere once more.
Yeah. Well, and I think at this point, too, the Republicans have been passing a lot of stuff that they know Harry Reid is not going to bring up to a vote in the Senate, and they're getting it out there because I think they want to make the point, look, he won't even vote on it. And then, of course,
that's what needs to be done. They need to be talking more and more about the things that they have attempted to do when they try to put the blame on them as being the obstructors. And say, hey, well, such as with the budget. I mean, they put 5 budgets out there this year, and not one of them made it to the Senate floor to be discussed. Now, all 5 of them could have been lousy. They could have been lousy bills, each and every one. But how do you know? How do you know you couldn't have actually sat down and talked about one of them and turned it into a budget with some negotiating from one side to the other?
Well, and I think we need to
don't even give it a chance.
That. We need to get, that's what we as the voters should expect, is compromise. Now, I'm not saying they need to compromise our principles. If you look at what we've been dealing with, I mean, the Republicans have been saying cut the budget. Obama and the Democrats have been saying, oh, no, that's draconian. And anytime the Republicans even just talk about cutting the growth of the budget, the increases, they just want to pare them down so we don't increase things as much. The Democrats act like it's the end of the world and Paul Ryan's pushing grandma off a cliff in a wheelchair. Anytime we actually try and talk about fixing things, but they don't entertain the dialogue. They don't debate it. They don't really go through the budget and work through the points and say, well, okay, we have to get something out there. Let's pick and choose. Let's go through it. They just don't do it. It's like we present, where the Republicans present theirs, the Democrats present theirs, and there's no reaching across the aisle. Now, look, as far as I'm concerned, what's going on with the Republicans and their refusal to raise taxes, that is a good thing. The last thing we need in a hurting economy is to raise taxes on anyone. And instead, we have Obama, who is, he's insisting that raising taxes be a part of any budget cuts. I mean, they increased the budget between 2008 and 2009. They doubled it with all the stimulus and bailouts, and they just are maintaining those ridiculous levels of spending. And they're refusing to cut anything unless we raise taxes. I mean, if you ask me, why don't we go back to 2008 level spendings, or I'm sorry, maybe 2007 even. If it can't be that much lower that it's so draconian, because Grandma wasn't getting pushed off a cliff back in 2007. But if we could just go back to those spending levels, we will still be racking up millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in deficit. But it won't be $2 trillion a year. Yeah. And we can't even get them to pare down that ridiculous spending. For Obama to talk about common sense. I mean, that people want common sense like he did in Pittsburgh, or was that Ohio, and he did in that second clip. I mean, come on. Who is he fooling here? There's nothing common sense about this administration.
I mean, if just put it on a personal level, every one of those congressmen, you know, the president, any of them, and if their personal life had taken a bad turn and they don't have their income or whatever it is that's happened to them, and they can't afford to live the lifestyle that they're living. They can't afford the mortgage, they can't afford the car, and everything else that's going around it. You make adjustments. You know, you sell the house, you get a smaller house, or you do whatever you have to do to bring your expenses in line with what your income is. And it just boggles my mind that something that simple can't be applied to the federal budget when they go to work. That's really all it is. I mean, some of these guys, you know, they're lawyers, they have law firms. Some of these guys were independent businessmen, you know, and so they understand these things. But yet for some reason, the simple accounting principles from their life and from their businesses, for whatever, they just toss it out the window. It's like it doesn't apply in Washington. That there's something else that you should be doing when you go to Washington, because math doesn't work here. We do something else here.
They have a reality all their own where they can just spew whatever facts about gold-pooping unicorns they can possibly come up with out of nowhere. They don't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be logical, and they just expect us to believe it and swallow it and base our decisions on that. You know, I just read an interesting article, and it says that Obama's proposed tax hike. Now, this is, you know, of course, we've been dealing with the tax-mageddon idea that they're going to let Bush tax cuts expire, and that will hit in 2013. And these tax cuts expiring will hit the middle class very hard. I know just the child tax credit going from $1,000 to $500 will affect a lot of people in the middle class. But what Obama's talking about doing is only raising taxes on, or only letting those Bush tax cuts expire, that is, which will amount to raising taxes on people making over $250,000 a year. And he tried to make the argument that it only affects 97% of small businesses. And the article I read was really interesting because it points out that most business in America is small business, and that to say 97% will not be affected, well, that means 3% will be affected. And they figure that based on Obama's own estimates, that taxes will be going up under this plan for 620,000 small businesses in America. Now, the Republicans estimate that tax increase will actually hit 940,000 small businesses in America. Small business is struggling right now, and you cannot go by their income because that doesn't really take into account their expenses. I mean, we pay taxes, income taxes, based on what we bring in. So a small businessman who brings in $300,000 a year through his income may be paying out $280,000 a year in overhead. But, you know, the income taxes goes based on your gross income. So it doesn't take into account your expenses. It will be affecting quite a few people, small business-wise, who don't handle their accounting except through their individual income. The article, it said that Obama's hoping to minimize the PR fallout from his proposal to allow the Bush tax cuts to expire for high earners. And he's, you know, noting in remarks Monday, which was yesterday, that 97% of small businesses, many of which file under the individual tax code, would not be affected. Now, Obama suggested that the number of small businesses affected was trivial. And, I mean, that's pretty typical of him to make a policy decision that affects thousands, hundreds of thousands of people's lives, and to just think it's trivial. I mean, most people agree. This is pretty common consensus that raising taxes on middle-class families or small businesses, especially right now when people are struggling, is a bad idea. It's detrimental to this country.
It's horrible. It's the wrong time to be hitting these small businesses, and it's not just the small. But there's a lot of things in the Bush tax cuts that are going to expire or change that has nothing to do really. His goal is to hurt the people of $250,000 and up, but he's hurting everybody. For example, the marriage tax. The marriage tax is gone, but he's going to be bringing it back for everybody. It doesn't matter what you are. And if you take that and if you add everything in there, that if he doesn't change, and he's only talking about for 1 year, by the way, letting the lower and middle class tax cuts stay, only for another year. He wants Bush tax cuts gone completely. He's only talking about getting past election time, then they're going to expire.
Oh, that's right, only for a year.
Yeah, so after he gets reelected, they're going to go away altogether because that's what he wants. So if you're a middle-income person, and depending on where you were, because if you remember when Bush first made these changes, there were 5 different tax brackets, and now there's only 4. So if you were in the middle to the lower, you took a big jump down. On average, people got 5% less. In their they're being taxed 5% less. That's what their cut was. But if you were on that lower bracket and you hit it, you actually got 15% more money in your paycheck. That's how good it was for you. Now, if you were lucky enough to hit that, and now you're married, well, now you got the marriage tax is about I think it was 18 to 22%. So you got 5% there, 18% on the marriage tax. You're going to get hit with the child income tax, like you were talking about. By the time you're done with everything, you're going to be close to 33 to 34% less in your salary after the Bush tax cuts are gone. And that doesn't even count what's going to happen with Obamacare and all those things, your higher insurance rate and so forth. It's good. I know everybody jokes when they say tax again, but they don't realize what's coming. They really don't.
Oh, I can tell you, like I said, just the child credit tax going away is going to hurt us. Now, we're in the middle class. We're struggling. Everybody's struggling in the middle class. And I heard with Obamacare, there are 20 taxes that are going to go into effect.
Yeah.
They'll be gradually, we'll start paying, I think, the first one in 2013, don't we? Don't you like how these guys, they passed this legislation in 2010, and it doesn't go into effect or affect, the really important stuff that is going to really hurt us and small business doesn't go into effect until after the 2012 election?
A lot of people don't realize that even though this passed back in 2010, there were taxes and regulations that started in 2011, and there were more that started in 2012, and there are 24 more that are going to be starting in January. And the tax, there's going to be a 3% tax on medical equipment that's going to start for the manufacturers. And you're going to laugh, but this is like everything from a thermometer to a blood pressure machine to a CPAP machine to an oxygen machine to a stent to a artificial limb. Everything is considered in that group, and everything you're going to pay an extra 3% starting in January.
How does that make health care more affordable?
I want somebody to tell me that.
It doesn't. I hate the way they name these bills, the Affordable Care Act. Yeah, right. Get real. The Affordable Care Act. They're so full of hot air.
Yeah, it's affordable for Warren Buffett, but that's about it. It's not affordable for us. It's going to get bad. It really is, and that's why I think Romney's going to get a better shot now of using that as a weapon to get himself into office and get it repealed. But they need to get out there more. They need to start educating people more instead of being as silent as they are. And maybe they plan on doing it in the future. I don't know, but at the time's come to start, I think.
Oh, I wish they would. I wish they could work together. Although I'm not so sure, because I understand everybody always wants to compromise and we want to get things done. The problem is, who's going to compromise? I mean, in order for the Republicans to cut a deal with Obama, they have to raise taxes, because that's the ultimatum that Obama has laid down, that he isn't going to cut a budget and he isn't going to do all kinds of things unless they raise taxes. And, I almost wonder if he's not trying to kill the middle class, like he's an aristocrat here trying to ensure his monarchy.
Yeah. I don't understand why they just don't turn around and say to him, you know what? We will give you every tax increase you want. As soon as you sit down and go through that budget line by line, and in each line go through that one line by line, and get rid of all the waste. Listen to the Simpson Bowl report, where it's got how many billions of dollars you could save because you have jobs that are duplicated out there. Go through and take care of all that. Go through and get rid of these wasteful things like these studies for people for studying shrimps on treadmills and mating habits of bees and all these stupid things, and get rid of all these wasteful things in the Defense Department. I read a story one time where they transported a bolt from Texas to Washington, I think it was, and the cost of the transportation was like $200,000 for something you get at any hardware store for probably $1.
Not even $1.
Yeah. If you can go through with a straight face, get rid of all that crap, and then come back and say, okay, we've gotten rid of it all, and we still can't balance the budget, then we'll give you all the tax increases you want.
Well, and who's going to do it? I mean,
Nobody.
who would it? No.
They won't. They wouldn't do it, and it's a sin, because that's a compromise to me. I mean, that's a true compromise. I had somebody say to me, why don't we just let them do what they want anyway? And it's an interesting thought. You can sit there and say, okay, look, we'll give you all the tax increases you want, and when it fails, you own it and you have to leave town. But at that point, the damage is done. It's like stupid.
But you know how that would work. They would give them all the tax increases they wanted, and then when the time came for them to leave when it didn't work, they wouldn't.
No, they blame us. It would still be our fault, so.
That's
what compromise is. I mean, like I said, it's just common sense to me, and I don't understand where common sense has gone up there, because it's completely gone.
Yep, it's supposed to be give and take, compromise. But, let's not, the Republicans were going after cutting the budget for Planned Parenthood and for NPR. And those are small budget cuts in the whole scheme of things. I understand that. But they, to me, they are the most obvious choices, because the government shouldn't even be involved in those things anyway. But if they have to barter that kind of crap, because, for the Democrats, it's very important that they maintain their Planned Parenthood budget.
Mm-hmm.
And, fine, cut the budget elsewhere. Cut it 10% across the board. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know why they can't do that. If they have to cut every federal employee's salary 10% to do that, then they may have to do it. We can't have a government that we're paying more for than the private sector can support. And that's what we have now. and nobody's willing to give on anything. Like I said, I hate to even push compromise because I don't want to see Republicans compromise and give up on tax increases. I want this government to actually cut spending. And I don't mean cut increases and, budget and project that in 10 years we'll cut the budget. I'd like to see them cut the next year's budget and actually pass one. But I guess I expect too much from this government.
I mean, they could have just simply, from day one, they could have just sat back and said, okay, here's the last budget that was passed under George Bush. Let's not play with anything. Let's just say, okay, 5% across the board for everything. And all those congressmen, we'll all kick back 10% of our salaries. And then next year, do it again. Another 5%. If you'd have done that, we'd be down 15% right now, and that would be a major improvement.
I just read, it was a couple of weeks ago, it was actually on Breitbart.com, that 23% of small business owners in this country went an entire year without pay. Now, I was in that boat. We had a small business in 2008. We had a hard year. We were in the hotel industry, and boy, when things get bad in the economy, it hits the hospitality industry first. The first thing people start doing is tightening their belts and not going on vacation. The hospitality industry includes restaurants, and people don't go out to eat if they can't afford to. So our industry was hit hard. And everybody in our company, we're a very small company, went without paychecks sometimes. We were, lucky to get one every month or so. And that is hitting 23% of small business owners to go an entire year without pay. And this is, these are the owners trying to keep their companies afloat, so not taking any money out of the company and trying to make sure their employees get paid and doing what they can to just stay in business. So as far as I'm concerned, until they balance the budget, I think we should dock all of Congress's pay. We should dock the president's pay. As long as these people can't do the simplest of their jobs. I'm sorry, but a federal budget, we can't do that much. Even if they disagree on it, they can't pass one, even if they don't like it. It's ridiculous. I'm fast losing patience with these people. When I watch small companies dying all around us, and I had the most disheartening year. It was in 2011. For the first half of the year, I worked for about 6 months for a small company, and I was just telemarketing, and it was my job to call around all over the Dallas-Fort Worth area and talk to small businesses. And what killed me about it is how many of these companies I came across. It was disheartening to see how many of these numbers were just disconnected outright. But I could pass that off as, okay, that's a bad record. It was a bad number. It wasn't that company's gone. The really disheartening thing was speaking to the owners of some of these small businesses and finding that they are either going out of business, they're downsizing, and they're leaving their offices and pulling their businesses back into their homes, that they were selling to a large corporation because they couldn't afford to do it anymore. I had several people that I talked to that were approaching retirement age, so they were going to retire early. And, it was amazing how many times I heard things like, I just can't take it anymore, or it's not worth it anymore, I'm not making any money, and I'm not barely surviving, I can't. And they were trying to keep their small businesses running, but they were losing what little money they had set aside for retirement in trying to maintain it. So they were just basically calling it quits. Small business is dying here, and small business supports this country. Everybody gets so mad about corporations, and I hear so much nasty rhetoric about corporations and how evil and greedy they are. But if we're really going to be realistic, most corporations in this country are small business. More than half of them I don't know anymore if that's the case. I know it used to be about 2/3 of our business was small business. It was the independent people, the people who work for themselves, and that is the backbone of this country. And we're the ones who are dying. We're the ones who are getting killed here. All those multinational corporations, they're doing great. They don't care if Obama and Democrats raise taxes, the corporate tax rate, because all their manufacturing is already outsourced. They're already in another country. It's not going to affect them. Even if their taxes go up a little bit or they have to pay a little bit more, what's going to end up happening is all these small business guys who are here in America who can't afford to outsource or run a manufacturing plant in Mexico or Indonesia, they're going to go out of business. So the large multinational corporations will basically be getting rid of their competition. Hey, it's worth it to them to pay maybe a little bit more in their taxes if they even have to, if they can run their competition out of business. I mean, it's almost like our corrupt government is making all these special rules for all these people who are lobbying them and spending the money to get them to change policies specifically for them. We give subsidies to certain large businesses, but who's really dying then is the smaller companies who can't afford to go lobby for their special favors. I mean, we've got Obamacare coming through, and they handed out waivers. I just don't know how that can be legal for them to hand out a waiver to unions, to any companies, and not make that option open for everybody. But that's what we're dealing with. So all Obama's friends and all his cronies get the special deals, the special subsidies, the special loans. All these little green energy companies that are going out of business, this is what we're dealing with. And the small business, the people who can't afford to lobby Congress are dying. We're seeing the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And it's not for the reasons that the left is telling us. They always tell us, oh, it's those greedy capitalists making it happen. The thing about corporations and them running things and cronyism in the government is that corporations can't take over the world as long as the government isn't corrupt. If they're doing their jobs, really keeping a fair playing field, not making special deals for one group and giving subsidies to other groups, but if they really keep the playing field level, then it's not possible. It's not going to happen. We will have competition. The markets will drive prices. The markets will drive salaries. People won't be going out of business. They'll be able to compete because they won't be at an unfair advantage with these large multinational corporations who are paying people pennies a day to manufacture things in China and elsewhere.
That's for sure.
Huh. Do you hear that?
No.
Okay. I won't talk about it.
What are you hearing?
I think it's a Skype thing. I don't know if somebody's trying to message me, or I don't know if it was you or not.
No. Actually, I don't even think you're on Skype right now.
I'm not? No, I have to be. If you can hear me on the radio, I got to be on Skype.
Hmm.
How long do we have left? Do we have time to go into
6 minutes.
Let's hit on Debbie, what's her name, Shultz, real quick. There was an interview that I wanted to look at from this weekend, and mostly because I was so unimpressed with the things that some of these news blogs have pulled from this interview, and both liberals and conservatives. It was Debbie, what's her name, Shultz. She appeared on Fox News Sunday, and she had 10 full minutes to spew Democrat talking points, and anchor John Bolton, he shut her up a few times, and he countered her talking points with some uncomfortable facts. And so I recommend that you watch the whole thing. I will post it on the blog notes so you can see it for yourself. He just stuffed her pretty well on some points. But you'll never see that, on the Mediaite type places. What I did see pulled out of this interview in several blogs was 2 tiny clips. The general interview was the DNC and the RNC debating the economy. And now one thing I have to say for Fox News, and I don't always see this on other networks, is that they post transcripts of their interviews from their shows in their entirety. And I cannot stress enough how important it is that you can read your news as opposed to just listening to, the mind-numbing video or audio on TV or the radio. It's just too easy to miss things or hear them wrong. And when it's written in front of you, you can think about it more and scrutinize it. You can go back and reread and contemplate it. So I'll post her full interview, and you can see it in context. But this is, the Democrat rhetoric of how things are going here. Let's start with a clip where Shultz says we're all good. She's happy even though our jobs numbers suck.
So then is the suggestion that we should just keep doing the same thing? There's that old definition of doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
What we should do, I'm pretty happy about 28 straight months of job growth in the private sector.
Are you happy about 80,000 jobs last month?
Hold on a second, John.
69 the month before that? Are you happy with those numbers?
Like I've said, we and President Obama has said, we need to continue to improve, and we need to do more, and we need to work together. But
Yes, let's continue to do more and to work together, because we've been doing so much of that for the last 3.5 years.
Yeah, and it's going so well.
Yeah, I know, it's working great, right? Yeah. The whole little clip reminded me so much of Obama telling us, hey, the private sector is doing fine. We're supposed to ignore what we know to be true and believe them every time they say, hey, we're good, it's all good. There was an excellent piece in Forbes this week, and it's called The Ongoing Disgrace That Is Obamonomics. And I'll post that as well. I don't really have time to read anything from it, but one very important point it makes is that we are in economic stagnation. When our economic growth sits at 2% or below, which I believe we've been looking at 1.9% growth for the first quarter of this year, and then all of last year we were looking at 1.7% growth. That is economic stagnation. Any other party, than the Democrats, if the Republicans were in office and had less than 2% economic growth, they would be screaming it in the press about stagnation. You would hear that word stagnating so much you would be sick of it. But we really don't hear it. We keep hearing about recoveries, slow recoveries. This is not a slow recovery. This is total economic stagnation, and it's been going on for years. And she's trying to stand here and say, we've seen growth. We've seen growth every month for 28 months. And it's a lie. We've seen growth, very, very poor growth that in any other party's economy would be called stagnation. It's the definition of the word. You gotta look up economic stagnation, Google it, go look on Wikipedia. We're in it. This is it, and the media isn't telling us about it. They aren't harping on it. They aren't working themselves up into a little frenzy and trying to get everybody angry and upset. We just keep hearing, hey, it's good. We're doing fine. It's all good. I'm happy with these numbers. We got to continue to work, but we're doing good. I don't know how they get away with this stuff. Now we've got unemployment set at 8%. That's good. That's good. It hasn't gone up. How bad does it have to get, and how bad does it have to stay before they decide to try a new approach? And I guess we're looking at the end of the show tonight.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Well, thank you so much, George.
You're quite welcome. Great show.
And you've been listening to Words Matter with George and Mary Weeks on All Fired Up Radio. I will post the notes from tonight's show, and you can see the links, videos, and transcripts that we discussed at allfiredupmedia.com and redwhitebluenews.com. Thank you for joining us this evening. We will be back next Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Until then, have a wonderful week, and God bless America. Oh, and don't forget to contact the Department of Justice and demand Eric Holder's resignation. Again, good night.
Words Matter with Mary Weeks is an All Fired Up Radio original broadcast. To find more Words Matter podcasts, go to www.allfiredupmedia.com.